there's no bounds, as in we just continue to grow out the biomes, we continue to grow out the geologies, and add and create, maybe even imagine up new definitions of what a world can consist of. There's really no ceiling there.
I'm with Kayla Comalli, who is co-founder and CEO of Lovelace Studios, which just released this really amazing demo on Twitter and LinkedIn and all these other places online, showing a world building system where you can enter a text prompt and it turns it into a world that you can start exploring. I thought it was really great. Other people have attempted this. This is the first one I've seen that actually looked real. So welcome, Kayla. Thanks for joining me to talk about the work you're doing.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. Super exciting.
Since it's such a compelling demo, I want to do what I don't usually do and actually like look at the demo a little bit, just because I want to share it with people so they see the magic that's going on here. So when I look at this, it starts with this create winter alien forest. And suddenly I'm walking around in a world here, and it goes through these other biomes and environments that I can go through. Really interesting here. So I just encourage people to look at the full length version, but we're looking at it here. Tell me a little bit about what we're looking at. And first of all, is this a world building tool for game developers? Is this a tool that you see consumers using? Talk about high level what you're accomplishing with the product. And it's called Nyric, right?
Lovelace Studio, but the platform is Nyric, named after Nyric, which is the adjective for the surreal quality of dreamlike states, and pretty representative to how this is kind of operating. Is that it's consumer facing. We want to make it for gamers and players first, in a space that there's a lot of agency potential in terms of 3D interaction, and that's something that was really captivating to me as well. Just something I wanted to see more of and see what the potential could be if you could prove that out. And so yeah, it uses AI. Players can give a prompt, basically break down the world into constituent components, and this can vary. You can give the same prompt and get a different world. So it's kind of exciting, and like rolling the dice every time. You get to, as a third person, and eventually with VR incorporations, you can explore this world, and craft within it will be some later features where trying to create it as an aggregate platform was what we like to say. We want to make it versatile in such a way that just about everything is kind of generated on the fly. All of the content, from the meshes to the textures, and it takes a lot of partnerships to do that, for sure. Definitely want to shout out some of our partnerships. Sloyd AI, an amazing Norwegian company that's doing these real time meshes, unique mesh objects, and Polyhive, an incredible texture startup. Great folks over there. Big thumbs up. They can do some impressive like 4K, 8K textures within 5 minutes, and they're out of this world. Super smooth facing. Like no matter what the mesh, they can make it. They can wrap it in a very cool way. Worth checking out. So yeah, the idea is that we want to build kind of everything as an aggregate. So imagine you can have these worlds built on the fly, that they could persist, that you could have your own realm. Then you could have communities, like a multiplayer community that you grow. There's social achievements one can make. There's crafting achievements. If you want to promote your space out, if you want to build and trade within unique resources, these unique textures that you can modify. You can then explore other spaces. The idea is eventually, if we can make it all generative and build it out in a what we like to call a ubiquitous rule system, which kind of keeps each world competitively aligned, limited, maybe some amount of randomness, but mostly competitive in terms of the resources that are spawned. So stuff like that, people can find some drive and intent that builds out these communities long term, that you've seen in other MMOs, the World of Warcraft, EVE Online, that kind of experience, which is what we're kind of going for.
So you just laid out a whole template for a lot of really interesting things. So there's the game itself and the experience of playing in a virtual world. There's the technology. Let's talk about the technology a little bit first, because I think that it's important to appreciate the complexity and the complication of building out entire worlds, because it sounds like we start with the text prompt and that brings something into existence. And then we've got to start pulling in assets, right? So it's a world, it's a landscape, but it's everything from trees to objects to you name it. And then those actually have to be textured and look like something. I've talked about this in an article I wrote online on my Substack about this very big map of the graphics pipeline that exists in games, and how many steps there are, and the complication of that. Let's maybe start at the beginning. So I start with a text prompt. Like, what is happening there? Is that using AI, or is that a search? Like,
Yeah, so the text prompt is using AI. The game can be connecting to an API in real time, live, and within 10 seconds, it's using ChatGPT to parse down, break down those components. A world, we can try to define a world and probably accurately do so in many different ways through biomes and geologies, and this can apply for underwater worlds. This can apply for alien worlds. You can add post processing effects, atmospheres, skies, lighting, fog. There's so many toggleable, modifiable components that's just very exciting. And this is just this the product is still early, but the we wanted to prove out the potential behind that. And so using ChatGPT, we can have it give us those components. So that's what happens with the text. It comes in, and then we know what range of things to build. Sometimes continuous, sometimes we want a lot of variability in the size of things and such. And then those spawn real time in the world within 10 seconds, which is has been tough to do. That's designing the generation system has been an interesting challenge. We're doing it in Unreal 5.1, but 5.2 came out today, which is amazing because the procedural content network, the generation networks, is going to be very good. It's probably going to help out with landscapes a lot. Yeah, so these assets, static meshes, textures, most games, the world is set somewhat as it is. You can manipulate the elements within there, but it's like what you see is what you get. Whereas what we're trying to do is very fluid, and to build things out into like packed level instances, we have to use data layers. There's like streaming proxy adjustments and dynamic materials that we have to modify. It's been an interesting challenge, surprisingly harder than we expected it to be, but doable. And so that's been fun, just figuring it out, puzzling through.
well, I want to dive down into those pieces too, because I think people think it's interesting from the standpoint of the world building kit that you basically provided, but also just even within their own startups, different components that they might be able to use in a game, like some of the vendors that you were mentioning. But back to the language model piece. So you allow the user to provide a prompt. It sounds like you're sending that to Chat GPT. So that's interesting, because we're now taking advantage of full natural language processing. We're using Chat GPT to provide the interpretation. And it sounds like, if I understood what you said, response that you're getting from ChatGPT is something around the data description or the properties of the biomes that you can then invoke. So I'm using its ability to have this infinite English, or I guess any language, expressiveness, where I say what I want. And to the extent that these biomes and properties are available within your system, it'll kind of combine those together into the world that's being built. And am I getting kind of step one of the process?
That's how it works essentially. We have pretty like the prompt gets parsed, just a Python script, and we'll break that down into the components and make the prompt that we will ask ChatGPT as a series of I think we have 10 or so that we do right now. And we're pretty verbose with our prompts, and we're restricting it to give us back very specific answers. And we're limiting those. We're sometimes making it an array. We're sometimes sometimes it's kind of forced to make certain decisions. But and so this is why we call it whitelisted, is that we're making sure that whatever happens, a world will be created. And it's just going to be a matter of how wild is it,
Mhm.
that sort of thing. Yeah.
That sounds almost like code generation when I go to ChatGPT and I'm like, generate some code on this. Or if I say, give me this JSON object populated with a bunch of data. I don't know if you're using JSON, but it's giving you back a set of properties. Okay, so now we've got these properties. You'll have some of them, some of you don't. AI systems are very data hungry. That is, I guess, the next part, like data, access to content and objects, because to make this have, like, I guess, infinite or near infinite combinatorial results, that's where some of these other vendors you mentioned come in. So Sloyd, for example, tell us about that and how do you use them?
Sloyd is a fantastic alternative when we're not running on like a Tesla V100, when we don't have to do stable diffusion. I know there's a lot of progress with NVIDIA and NERF, and then in November, Magic 3D, which runs off stable diffusion, came out as a twice as fast option to the Dream Fusion, Google's Dream Fusion, in I think April or so of last year, which was kind of one of the first like truly impressive examples of text to 3D. Dream Fusion takes an hour and a half. Magic 3D, NVIDIA's Magic 3D is 40 minutes, so it's half the time just about, and it's getting faster, yes, but it's exceptionally expensive. And there's ways to do this more performantly, and we also have like need to by necessity if we're expecting people to be able to work with meshes that are dynamic. We can't be weighing down people's hard drives. So um, that's where Sloyd is phenomenal, because they use a parametric base engine. They just algorithmically modify the meshes, and like kind of a low poly, like a table, for example, just consists of different series of like cubes and rectangles and components, and manipulating those, adding just like small components and pieces intelligently is a really fantastic system that happens in less than 33 milliseconds. So really cool for the turnaround time for us as well, because we don't want players to just hang around for 40 minutes. So.
I'm kind of hearing, though, based on your design, that you could start aggregating together lots of these systems. So it sounds like Sloyd could be a generator. These currently slow 3D model generations are another resource. You could even use like pre-labeled meshes that exist in a library and bring them in. I'm kind of making things up here, but it sounds like the magic is happening in the biome description and the way it attaches this labeled data to the various components. Am I hearing that right, or correct me if there's a better way to think about the architecture?
Having this system where it's kind of there's no bounds, as in we just continue to grow out the biomes, we continue to grow out the geologies, and add and create, maybe even imagine up new definitions of what a world can consist of. There's really no ceiling there. And for another example, we're working with Convai. We're using their SDK to have a little companion, like just a particle companion, quite popular. You see like the little robot circle orb sphere thingies, and Halo, and Portal, and Borderlands all over the place. Very, very good to have. Just using background characters and NPC building, and you can imagine, once somebody locks down on a world theme, then from there they could just have characters spawn in that space and build up, have persistent data. As large language models get better with long-term persistence, it's just going to get cooler and cooler, and we're starting to finally see games that are doing that. But the crazy thing is, it hasn't been really happening up until now, so it's a no man's land for sure.
Okay, so you've got virtual beings, AI, conversational AI powering characters in there as well, which is really interesting. Just before we move on to that and some of the other aspects of this, so it sounds like there actually is this very combinatorial aspect already, in that you've got these parameterized objects that you can get from Sloyd and bring into the system. You had earlier mentioned Polyhive, who, as I understand, they focus on texture maps that can be applied to 3D objects. So just right there, by just combining those two things together, it sounds like there's, for practical purposes, an infinite possibility space. I'm not super familiar with them. Can you tell me a little bit about them? How you're using the texture mapping within your?
Yeah. So this is actually a pretty new partnership. Fortunately, they have an Unreal SDK, which is sometimes a bit rare because a lot of games are developed in Unity. So how they work is they um, use a model that takes an existing mesh. Players can either upload them on the website, or you can just submit it as an FBX or OBJ file, and it will generate an image in typically around 5 minutes or so, up to 5 minutes, I think. And you can, like, if you wanted a grenade as one of their examples, you like with all of the ridges and like details, it can actually just make that. So you have a grenade mesh, which depending, could be a couple hundred or a couple 100,000 vertices, but the magic is what they wrap on top of it, how they can emulate roughness, they can emulate sheen and different shading and damaging, and like it's kind of creating the whole thing. And so that's where we think there's a lot of power. And if we you know the monetization component of what we're building is we're still working that out because we're trying to be as non-Orwellian as possible about it. But we don't want people to, definitely not a pay to win, but like maybe people, if they wanted to pay a little extra, they could get a fancier, like more photorealistic world that can take advantage of Unreal's Nanite and Lumen tech, which does real time, like, level of detail based off of where the player is. It's performant and looks amazing. So that sort of stuff.
I feel like every game studio that started building a virtual world more than a year ago and is in the middle of it has got to be super jealous of you right now, because you're taking advantage of two really interesting convergent trends. So all of these generative AI technologies, from ChatGPT to the image synthesis you've got in something like Polyhive, to these vast libraries of parameterized 3D objects in Sloyd, but also at the same time, all of this stuff happening with software based ray tracing, Nanite and Lumen. Like, it used to be that we had to bake lights for a whole environment. And now you don't have to, like, talk a little bit about that, because I think that's also a really interesting convergent aspect of this thing, where you're being able to focus on the creativity of the experience now, instead of like go and do something super boring.
Ye- Yeah, no, we are very lucky in that regard. We don't have to build Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 in assembly. So that guy is one of my heroes. Um, and no, it's amazing. I think the timing of it couldn't be better. Officially, I founded the company in February 2021, so about 2 years and a couple months ago. Originally as a virtual reality company in Unity, so very different. Trying to build a multiplayer kind of avatar, elemental combat style thing, but that has obviously shifted. In fact, it was a year and a half of development in Unity, and then when Unreal 5 was released last April, we saw the potential with how performant this rendering could be, how easy it would be to integrate these assets. When you want Unreal, Unity is very performant as well, of course, but it compiles in C sharp, whereas compiling down into C can really maximize the opportunity for runtime capabilities. So like that photorealistic threshold is kind of there for in terms of visuals, and then the blueprint system with Unreal is, I think, fantastic. Previously I'd been a coder for 8 years, writing in C++, TypeScript, Python, lots of bash scripting. Had been doing it for a long time. I worked for a robotics company and did perception and computer vision, but um, I was I was able to jump into this in a totally, a different system where you're not typing stuff out, you're just connecting nodes, and found it incredible. I won't go into the details, like I won't go into the weeds about it, but yeah, big fan of that system, and it makes production very quick, very fun. Visually, it makes the kind of design process in your head a lot smoother, I find.
Yeah,
Right.
this is the direct from imagination era that we're entering into. It's this idea of we're using the physics of space and using that within the rendering system. So light is happening the way light actually happens versus what happens in game engines in the past, which is all this bag of shader graph tricks that people figured out how to do, shader programming tricks, which was great experientially, but it means that there's a lot more weird work to do. Now we're basically modeling over real objects, which for combining that with what you're doing, which is all of these vast libraries of 3D objects and new texture maps, and actually bringing those forth into existence, you kind of needed that innovation to happen, or else you would have been back to the world of like setting up scenes, pre-baking them, or something voxelized like a Minecraft. That this gives you the expressiveness because of the physics that's taking place in engine.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually can't all be done still. Even now we're in the midst of it for sure. There are certain capabilities like engine level code that you can't change. When it comes to how landscapes and how the foliage is generated at runtime, they just there's too many editor functions that are linked to it that you can't touch, you can't modify. So you have to hack it in really strange and odd ways. It's where data layers and level instances come in. There's ways to do it now, so that's the kind of high level developers had to face previously. It's just like a new level of challenges. What can this do? Okay, well, what can it not do? Like let's figure that out and let's try to break it.
The oldest paradigm in game development is, me, the game developer, the designer. I make something and then I ship it to you, and now you get to play it. Along the way, we've started to have sandbox environments. We've had user-generated content. We've had things like Roblox, and then even like, Minecraft worlds and things like that. It seems like more and more of this is going to happen while you're playing, and more immediately. I guess the question I'm getting at is, talk to me a little bit about the player experience around this. How is this going to shape the way the players, the users, the citizens of the metaverse, whoever they are here in the future, how does this reshape the world for everybody?
A lot of the motivation for me and my co-founder Alex, who's just phenomenal, been in the game development space for 18 years and just total powerhouse. We both had this shared vision of kind of coming back to the original theme of the metaverse, like how it was written out in terms of creative potential and community building. It was like one of the first quote unquote MMOs. People, the metaverse term has gone through some roller coasters in the past couple of years, but and some people would say metaverse is a dystopian term, even when Stevenson wrote it as well. No, the world was dystopian, but the actual metaverse itself was quite amazing and limitless. And I think the spaces that we could achieve and recreate for people span social agency, in particular. Having a semblance of control in a crazy time.
Yeah, tell me what brought you to this.
So it's, kind of tinfoil hatty, but thinking of where we are now, which is in the AI revolution, like how did we get here? What does it mean for people in the future? And, the best thing to do is look into what happened previously. So, the industrial revolution, beyond the agricultural revolution. So in the late 18th, early 19th century, there was steam power. And, that the steam power revolution destroyed artisanal crafting industries and agricultural industries, but it created textiles and iron, steel, railroads, and mechanical engineers. Then in the late 19th, early 20th century, there was the electronic revolution, the combustible engines. So again, further craftsmen were impacted, agricultural jobs were destroyed, textiles and kind of a lot of labor intensive jobs were destroyed. But what came out was more manufacturing, a lot more engineering, transportation, development for cars and railroads, and the whole assembly line system. To the mid late 20th century, there was the digital revolution. A lot of the manufacturing jobs were destroyed primarily. And then obviously we created IT, Silicon Valley, software engineering. Everything, every revolution previously had something got destroyed, but something came in to take the place. And oftentimes it was easier. It was, maybe still entry level jobs, but more higher technicality, more white collar ease. So people aren't breaking their backs. But here it's a little different because, we're in the midst of the age of autonomy, where front end McDonald's ordering systems are replacing face to face over the counter people and such. But AI is now replacing jobs like solutions and marketing, cinema, like the arts as well. It's kind of spanning everything, R&D and like customer support. It's massive scale. It's not clear where people will go now.
Historically, most automation was sort of replacing, what we might call, for lack of a better term, kind of unskilled labor jobs, and then some skilled labor jobs as well. But this is now also absorbing a lot of knowledge work and a lot of relationship oriented work. So that's different, and potentially doing it at a much larger scale.
Yeah, in the midst of it, we still don't fully know. It's hard to predict exactly what's going to happen, but what we can probably see already is that there's a big social existential fear like instilling, like it's a lack of agency. If you lose your job to AI and you don't have anywhere else to go, it's a lot of control related fear. We're building up the world, of course there's a lot of advances. That's where I think crypto and with more stable, like maybe like real coins or stable coins and backed securities, things are going to start transforming once certain certain components get settled. Let the dust settle on everything lately. But yeah, I think that's where the metaverse has a lot of power. And so it's straightforward where AI has powers and has value in these fields and offices, right? What does it do? It gives us these heuristic baselines. It can quickly give us, not common sense, but like high level answers to a lot of things. I think there's a lot of power there, and it just comes down to how can we make it? How do we have the tools? Does AI give us the tools to escape? Some not even escape, but build a new digital identity in a new space with your friends, with you know maybe ways to find education, entertainment, eventually fitness and just personal growth. And we want it to be more than just a game. That's where the world interoperability is really important to us. I think Roblox is amazing, and Minecraft and their game mechanics are incredible, and definitely stuff we're fascinated and interested in building out in some forms. But we want it to kind of matter in a way that's interoperable, more persistent, like not a fleeting kind of short-term experience, ideally.
Well, you said escape, and then you moved on to some other things that are applications that move beyond escape. Is it possible that this is a realm where people will even be able to find meaning, like meaning through social connection, meaning through whatever they define meaning to be for themselves? What do you think of that?
I mean, I'm pretty biased personally. I think 100%. I've loved games since I was a kid. I played Roller Coaster Tycoon, Twisted Metal, the Tomb Raider, Resident Evil 2. Well, I watched my stepdad play Resident Evil 2. I could Spyro, Final Fantasy Tactics, like so many games on different consoles, and it was amazing for me because as a kid, my mom passed away when I was 13 from breast cancer. She had a decade of dealing with breast cancer, and you don't have any space to have your identity to kind of have a sense of control, and in that space, I was able to have something there, and it was amazing and powerful. In that space, people built those worlds. But in one of my favorite games was The Sims, and The Sims is you can build it out and you can do these things. And I think there's just it's hard. There's a hard like human emotion, like that is a component of human emotion that is consistent with many people, the vast majority of people, I think. And we're games and television has shown that we're capable of going outside of our minds. VR has shown that you can put on a headset and literally your brain's like, okay, I'm somewhere else now. Like it's totally doable, I believe. Yeah.
When you talk about The Sims, what I'm hearing is you had agency there. You were creating things, or at least you had this experience of creation. Is that part of what you want to bring to life within Nyric?
Yeah, I think so. And creation in terms of building your own world, having the idea initially is that you kind of your own character, but the character can evolve, have different facets and occupations. When we have our early access product, hopefully mid July or so, we'll be focusing on talking to people in the role playing space and the Dungeons and Dragons and like general hobbyists. We think that they would have a lot of fantastic creative input to help figure out exactly what that means. We don't want to, we can't assume that we know, and we wouldn't want to. I think we're trying, that's why we're consumer facing as well. We want to build it for the people. Definitely an interesting challenge. And then just I have Alex, fortunately, as my co-founder to just help with all these hyper complicated gaming mechanics.
Well, so you mentioned Web3. So and I love the bravery to use all the terms that have gotten kind of downtrodden over the last year or so, Web3, Metaverse, all of that, and kind of going back to the core of it. What you mentioned, the things with the assets and the speculation and whatnot. Let's kind of maybe push that aside. What is the core of Web3? If I'm hearing you more about the interoperability aspects that you were touching on earlier in our conversation, or is there a bigger picture there that I'm?
With our focus on being maybe like a Steam product that you would download as opposed to web based, we haven't spent too much time thinking about how that would look. I think there's also, when people say interoperable in reference to Web3, typically it's in terms of collective, like collective other companies coming together in like transferable avatars, transferable like presence, and kind of like a decentralized sort of way. Um, I think, but I also think that there's local, like there's a lot of power with when we start transferring assets that are larger. If people are local and like can kind of host these services in a pseudo blockchain like sense, then we can start sort of leveraging a community server to make the world kind of living and breathing and growing in a new way. Um, and of course, as we add these game elements and components, we want to and would have to monetize at some point. So um, different systems like auto battlers, or mechanics that hopefully aren't like gambling, but more just like community experiences are best fit for this format. Then it's just a matter of ease of access. To like how quickly can people jump on and get into this? And we want, the idea is for us, we want to abstract it all as much as possible, get their foot in the doors, and just see what the minimum requirements are to get that to happen. So yeah, it's definitely in the pipeline for sure. Just exactly how we integrate is up in the air, and I think I will leave to the people who are super vested in this space for sure.
When you talk about commu- community servers, it almost sounds like a decentralization kind of approach to this. Or is it part of your vision for people to own their own worlds and places? I know that's maybe not where you start with Steam today, but where does this go?
I think, like in terms of digital real estate and land claim and ownership, we're reaction like our first reaction is that we don't want to do that. It's kind of like counterintuitive to leveraging what is truly a vast digital space. And there's other mechanics, like in my head the idea could be, if people want a competitive system, they can like have their character function and exist in a like capitalist sphere, and then there's a socialist sphere where that does not happen and it's different. And you can like, it'd be a kind of just like Eve Online, which Alex spent a bunch of time working on as well, another shout out. Has been working on is or had been working on is these like incredible like studies that PhDs have done on social behaviors and how communities form and adapt according to these parameters that they're built in with these worlds, these social worlds. And yeah, I think definitely like allowing kind of anything to happen in a constrained, not in a constrained way, but like what kind of person are you, what is your digital person, what do are they interested in, and what spheres would they want to kind of grow or help build or explore. And maybe we can make that a possibility. And MMOs are very enticing as well. Metagravity is a company I met at GDC. Awesome, brilliant people. I think they're based in the UK, and they're just they're working on like managing a single server with like hundreds of thousands of people, which is we're getting to that point, and they're actually making it happen. So once we get there, then it's gonna be pretty wild, I think.
Well, what should people know about Nyric and Lovelace that we haven't talked about so far?
I think I mentioned briefly on some of the components, but obviously it sounds pretty large and still maybe a little nebulous. But the idea is we're going to be building a crafting system. We're proving out some early game components, some core game elements that people can play and want to continue coming back for. We want authentic, organic we want to virality, network effect, K factor, whatever you want to call it. We want people to bring in more people and want to do that. And so, and kind of differentiate ourselves as a B2C, not a B2B. We want it to be people focused. And so things like, the companion system, the NPC system will be coming out. We're working on both the world building, the world crafting and the companion system sort of simultaneously, and I think, in the next month or two, you'll see some more videos coming out that use generative components in a different way. And I think that will be really exciting because it's gonna start taking more form and differentiating as something that is, enticing for people. And what we're hoping for is that, mid July, we'll have an early access release. Maybe with, some of the targeted role playing communities like I mentioned, but also by the end of the year, hopefully, like a full on, like a multiplayer experience for players to check it out and experience and build out these persistent worlds.
Kayla, thanks so much for joining us to talk about this. The video you posted recently has gotten so much attention for a lot of good reasons. It looks really cool, and we'll want to come back and talk about it again, and I'll be watching it online. So thanks for coming here, sharing what you've done so far, and also your vision.
Absolutely, John. Yeah, thank you so much.